Hi, I'm Madison Rivers. I'm the CEO of Rivers Marketing Group, a company that's been featured in Forbes twice in the last 3 years. But 20 years ago, my parents left me at Chicago Union Station as what they called a joke. This morning, I woke up to 29 missed calls from numbers I hadn't seen in 2 decades. They found me. And honestly, I wish they hadn't. You know that feeling when someone you trust completely just disappears? When the people who are supposed to protect you become the ones who hurt you the most? Well, stick around because this story might hit closer to home than you think. It was July 15th, 2003. I was 25, fresh out of Northwestern with my MBA, and I thought I had the world figured out. My parents, Richard and Linda Johnson, had invited me on what they called a family reconciliation trip to Chicago. We'd been having tension about my career choices. I wanted to start my own marketing consultancy. They wanted me to join my father's insurance firm in our small Ohio town. The morning started normal enough. We took the train from Cleveland, and during the 3 hour ride, my mother kept making these little comments. Madison, honey, you know running your own business is so risky. Your father built his company for you to take over. Why do you always have to be so difficult? I should have seen the signs. The way they exchanged glances when they thought I wasn't looking. The way my father kept checking his watch. The way my mother's smile never quite reached her eyes. We arrived at Union Station around 2 p.m. on a sweltering Tuesday. The place was packed with summer travelers, families with screaming kids, business people rushing to catch connections, tourists with their cameras out. The noise was overwhelming. Announcements echoing through the speakers, wheels rolling across marble floors, conversations in a dozen different languages. My parents suggested we grab lunch at one of the restaurants in the food court. Nothing fancy, just some sandwiches and coffee. We found a small table near the main departure board, and that's when the conversation took a turn. Madison, my father said, unwrapping his turkey sandwich with deliberate slowness, we need to discuss your future. Here we go again, I thought. Dad, we've been through this. I'm not interested in insurance. But you're interested in throwing your life away? My mother's voice had that edge it always got when she was about to lose her temper. Do you have any idea how much money we've invested in your education? Nobody asked you to, I shot back, immediately regretting the words. The silence that followed was thick and uncomfortable. Other diners were starting to glance our way. My father's jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle twitching. You know what? My mother said, standing up suddenly. I need some air. Richard, walk with me. We'll be right back, my father added. But there was something in his tone that made my stomach clench. They left me sitting there with our luggage, 2 suitcases, my laptop bag, and my purse. I remember thinking it was weird that they'd leave all our stuff, but I figured they just needed a moment to cool down. I waited 15 minutes, then 30, then an hour. At first, I wasn't worried. Maybe they were window shopping, or maybe they'd run into someone they knew. Chicago was a big city, easy to get distracted. I tried calling my mother's cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Same with my father's. By 4 p.m., I was starting to panic. The departure board kept flipping, showing trains leaving for destinations all across the Midwest. Detroit, Milwaukee, Indianapolis. People came and went around me, but I stayed glued to that plastic chair surrounded by suitcases that suddenly felt like anchors. That's when I overheard them. I was about to get up and search the station when I heard my mother's laugh. That sharp, brittle sound she made when she thought she was being clever. I turned and saw them standing about 50 feet away, near the information desk. They were talking to a security guard, and my mother was gesturing in my direction. I couldn't hear everything, but I caught fragments. Teaching her independence. Needs to learn. Let's see how she finds her way home. And then my father said it, clear as day, loud enough for the security guard to chuckle. It's just a harmless joke. She's a smart girl. She'll figure it out. My blood turned to ice. They weren't coming back. They weren't planning to come back. I watched in stunned disbelief as they walked toward the exit. My mother's arm linked through my father's, both of them moving with the casual confidence of people who had somewhere to be. No looking back, no second thoughts, no acknowledgement that they were abandoning their daughter in a city 300 miles from home. The security guard they'd been talking to walked over to me, his expression sympathetic but slightly amused. Miss, your parents asked me to tell you that your train ticket is already paid for. The 6:15 to Cleveland. What? I could barely get the word out. They said it's some kind of family tradition, testing your problem solving skills. He shrugged, clearly uncomfortable now that he could see my reaction. Look, I'm sorry, but they seem to think you'd understand. I stared at him, then at the departure board, then at the exit where my parents had disappeared. The reality of the situation crashed over me like a cold wave. They had planned this. They had bought me a return ticket, told a stranger it was a joke, and left me here like I was a child who needed to be taught a lesson. But I wasn't a child. I was 25 years old with an MBA and a job offer from a Fortune 500 company. And they had just humiliated me in public because I wouldn't fall in line with their plans for my life. The silver bracelet on my wrist, a graduation gift from my grandmother before she passed, suddenly felt heavy. It was inscribed with "Family Forever," and looking at it now made me nauseous. I didn't take the 6:15 train to Cleveland. Instead, I sat in that station until almost midnight, calling every number I had for them. Their home phone was disconnected. Their cell phones went straight to voicemail. I even tried calling my Aunt Sarah, my mother's sister, but she claimed she hadn't heard from them. "Madison, honey," Aunt Sarah said, her voice strained. "Maybe they just needed some space. You know how your mother gets when she's upset." "They left me at a train station, Sarah. They told a security guard it was a joke." There was a long pause. "I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding." But I could hear it in her voice. She knew. They had told the family some version of events that made me sound dramatic, unreasonable. The black sheep who couldn't take a hint. That night, I checked into a cheap hotel near the station using my credit card. I lay awake staring at the water-stained ceiling, replaying the conversation at lunch, trying to figure out what I could have said differently, what I could have done to prevent this. By morning, I realized I was asking the wrong questions. It wasn't about what I had done wrong. It was about what kind of people abandon their own child to teach them independence. I tried calling them for 3 more days. I sent emails, text messages, even a certified letter to their house. Nothing. Complete radio silence. On the 4th day, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going home. If they wanted to play games, if they wanted to see how I'd find my way home, then I'd show them exactly what I was capable of. I transferred my savings from the joint account I shared with them, money I'd earned from internships and part-time jobs during college. It wasn't much, about $8,000, but it was enough to get started. I found a room in a boarding house on the north side, got a job waiting tables at a downtown restaurant, and enrolled in night classes to get my real estate license. The silver bracelet went into a drawer. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away, but I couldn't stand to wear it either. It became a reminder of the family I thought I had versus the reality of what they were willing to do. Those first months were brutal. Chicago in the winter is unforgiving, especially when you're working doubles at a restaurant and studying until 2 a.m. I lived on ramen noodles and coffee, wore the same 3 outfits in rotation, and learned to navigate the L system like a native. But something incredible happened during those long, difficult months. I discovered who I was when I wasn't trying to meet someone else's expectations. I was resourceful. I was determined. I was stronger than I had ever imagined. The restaurant job led to a connection with a marketing executive who became my first mentor. She saw something in me that even I didn't recognize yet, a hunger to succeed that had been sharpened by necessity. "You've got edge, kid," she told me one evening after I'd pitched her an idea for promoting the restaurant's weekend brunch. "Most people your age are still figuring out what they want to be when they grow up. You already know who you are." By the end of my first year in Chicago, I had my real estate license and was working part-time for a small marketing firm. By the end of year 2, I was managing their social media accounts and bringing in new clients. By year 3, I was ready to go out on my own. I started Rivers Marketing Consultancy in 2006 with 2 clients and a laptop I bought used from a pawn shop. The name change was deliberate. Madison Rivers sounded stronger, more confident than Madison Johnson. It represented the person I had become, not the person my parents had tried to keep me from becoming. The business grew slowly at first, then faster as word spread about my work. I specialized in helping small businesses build their brand identity, and I was good at it. Really good. There's something about starting from nothing that teaches you to see potential everywhere. I moved from the boarding house to a studio apartment, then to a one bedroom, then to a two-bedroom with a home office. Each upgrade felt like a victory, proof that I was building something real and lasting. The hardest part wasn't the work or the long hours or the constant uncertainty about money. The hardest part was the silence. Birthdays, holidays, achievements, all celebrated alone or with the small circle of friends I'd built in the city. I'd see families at restaurants, parents beaming with pride at their children's accomplishments, and feel this hollow ache in my chest. But I learned to fill that void with purpose. Every client I helped, every small business that thrived because of my work, every employee I was eventually able to hire, it all became part of a family I was creating rather than the one I'd lost. By 2010, Rivers Marketing had 15 employees and a client roster that included some of Chicago's most successful small businesses. I'd been featured in Crane's Chicago Business and asked to speak at marketing conferences. The scared 25-year-old who'd been abandoned at Union Station was gone, replaced by someone who had not just survived but flourished. And through it all, my parents remained ghosts. I'd search for them online sometimes, late at night when I couldn't sleep. I knew they were still in Ohio, still running the insurance agency, still living the same small town life they'd wanted me to share. Part of me hoped they'd heard about my success, that they'd reach out, that we could find some way to heal what had been broken. But a bigger part of me had made peace with their absence. They had taught me the most valuable lesson of my life, just not the way they'd intended. They'd shown me that the only person I could truly rely on was myself, and that sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the family you're born into. The silver bracelet stayed in my jewelry box, a reminder of both the pain and the power of that July day in 2003. Some jokes I'd learned change everything. 20 years had passed since that July day at Union Station. I was 45 now, and Rivers Marketing Group had grown beyond anything I could have imagined back then. We occupied 3 floors of a downtown Chicago high rise, employed over 200 people, and had been acquired by a Fortune 500 company for a sum that still made me dizzy when I thought about it. I'd built a life that felt complete. David Chen, my fiance of 2 years, was everything my younger self had dreamed of finding: kind, supportive, and genuinely excited about my success rather than threatened by it. We lived in a penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan, and I'd just accepted an invitation to join the board of directors for the Chicago Small Business Development Center. The morning of November 8th, 2023 started like any other. I was in my home office by 6 a.m. reviewing quarterly reports with my first cup of coffee when my phone started buzzing. The first call came at 6:15 from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. Then another at 6:22, then 6:28. By 7 a.m., I had 12 missed calls from various unfamiliar numbers. David emerged from the bedroom, hair still messy from sleep, carrying his own coffee. "Your phone's been going crazy. Everything okay?" I frowned at the screen. I have no idea. Probably spam callers, but this is excessive even for them. The calls kept coming throughout the morning. By the time I left for the office, I had 29 missed calls and 17 voicemails. Something cold was settling in my stomach, a feeling I hadn't experienced in years. "Madison, this is your mother, Linda Johnson. I know it's been a while, but we really need to talk to you. Please call me back at this number." I played the voicemail 3 times, standing frozen in my office. My assistant Jessica knocked on my door, but I held up a hand to stop her from entering. My mother's voice sounded older, frailer than I remembered, but it was definitely her. The second voicemail was from my father. "Madison, it's Dad. We saw the Forbes article about you. We're so proud of what you've accomplished. Look, we're in a difficult situation right now, and we really need to talk to you about some things. Family needs to stick together." Forbes article. I'd been featured in their Self-Made Entrepreneurs Under 50 issue 3 weeks ago. The piece had focused on my journey from startup founder to successful acquisition, but I deliberately kept the details about my family vague. Rivers credits her success to her independence and willingness to take calculated risks, the article had said. Nothing about parents who abandoned their daughter as a joke. But somehow, they'd found me. I spent my lunch break in my office with the door locked, listening to all 17 voicemails. The messages painted a picture I hadn't expected. My father's insurance agency was facing bankruptcy. My mother had been diagnosed with early stage breast cancer and was looking at expensive treatment options not covered by their insurance. They'd tried to sell the family home but discovered it was underwater on the mortgage. "We know we made mistakes," my mother's voice cracked in the seventh voicemail. "But you're our daughter, and we love you. We've always loved you. We need your help right now." My father's messages were more direct, more desperate. "Madison, I know you're successful now. I saw the numbers in that magazine. We raised you. We invested in your education. Surely you can spare something to help your family in our time of need?" The entitlement in his voice made my hands shake. By the afternoon, I'd made a decision that would have horrified my 25-year-old self. I hired a private investigator. Marcus Webb had helped me with background checks on potential business partners before. He was thorough, discreet, and expensive, exactly what I needed. Within 48 hours, he'd compiled a comprehensive report on Richard and Linda Johnson's current situation. The insurance agency was indeed failing, but not because of economic circumstances beyond their control. My father had made a series of poor investment decisions, including putting the business assets as collateral for a failed real estate venture in Florida. The breast cancer diagnosis was real, but my mother had delayed treatment for months, hoping it would go away on its own rather than deal with medical bills. But the most interesting discovery was how they'd found me. They'd hired their own investigator after seeing the Forbes piece. They knew about my company, my address, my net worth, even about David. They'd been watching me for 3 weeks before making contact. "There's something else," Marcus said during our meeting at a coffee shop downtown. "I talked to some people in their town. Your parents have been telling a very different story about your relationship for the past 20 years. "What kind of story?" "According to them, you had a falling out over money and cut contact with them. They claim they've been trying to reach out for years, but you've been too proud and stubborn to respond. They've positioned themselves as the heartbroken parents of an ungrateful daughter who forgot where she came from." The coffee in my mouth suddenly tasted like ash. They made themselves the victims. It gets worse. They've been using your success as a bragging point around town. Our daughter Madison is a big shot executive in Chicago. They take credit for your achievements while simultaneously complaining about how you abandoned them. I stared out the coffee shop window at the Chicago skyline, the city that had raised me when my parents wouldn't. 20 years of building a life, creating success, becoming someone I was proud to be, and they wanted to swoop in and claim ownership of it all. That night, David found me in our home office, staring at the silver bracelet I'd pulled from my jewelry box for the first time in years. "Want to talk about it?" he asked, settling into the chair across from my desk. I told him everything: the train station, the joke, the 20 years of silence, the phone calls, the investigation, the realization that my parents had been rewriting history to make themselves the heroes of a story where they were clearly the villains. "What are you going to do?" David asked when I finished. "I honestly don't know. Part of me wants to ignore them completely, but another part of me wants to confront them." I nodded. "They've been lying about me for 20 years, David. They've been taking credit for my success while playing the victims of my supposed cruelty. And now they expect me to just write them a check because we share DNA." David reached across the desk and took my hand. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you. But remember, you don't owe them anything, not after what they did to you." The decision was made for me 3 days later. It was the evening of our company's annual holiday party, a lavish affair in the ballroom of the Palmer House Hotel. 200 employees, clients, and partners celebrating another record-breaking year. I was in my element, moving through the crowd in a black cocktail dress that had cost more than I used to make in a month, discussing expansion plans and thanking people for their hard work. I was laughing at something one of my vice presidents had said when Jessica appeared at my elbow, her face pale. "Madison, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there are 2 people in the lobby claiming to be your parents. Security won't let them up, but they're insisting they need to speak with you." The blood drained from my face. Around me, the party continued, clinking glasses, laughter, the jazz quartet playing softly in the corner. But I felt like I was back in Union Station. surrounded by noise and movement while my world collapsed in slow motion. Tell security to escort them to the small conference room on the second floor, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I'll be down in a few minutes. David appeared at my side as if by magic. Madison, what's wrong? They're here, my parents. They came to my company party. His jaw tightened. Do you want me to have security remove them? For a moment, I considered it. It would be so easy to have them escorted from the building, to continue my party as if nothing had happened. But 20 years of unfinished business was standing in my lobby, and I realized I needed to face it. No, but come with me. I don't want to do this alone. The conference room on the second floor was small and windowless, designed for quick meetings and difficult conversations. When I walked in, I barely recognized the people sitting at the oval table. My father looked older than his 71 years, his hair completely gray and thinning, his once confident posture replaced by the slumped shoulders of a man who'd lost too many battles. My mother appeared fragile, her face gaunt from the cancer treatment, her hands shaking slightly as she reached for the water glass security had provided. But their eyes still held that same mixture of entitlement and manipulation I remembered from 20 years ago. Madison, my mother said, standing unsteadily. Oh, honey, look at you. You're so beautiful, so successful. We're so proud. She moved toward me as if to embrace me, but I stepped back, keeping the conference table between us. How did you get in here? I asked. We told them we were your parents, my father said, his voice carrying that familiar edge of impatience. We needed to talk to you, and you weren't returning our calls. I wonder why. My mother's face crumpled. Madison, please. We know you're angry, but we're family. We love you. We've always loved you. You left me at a train station. That was... My father started, then stopped, glancing at David, who was standing silently by the door. Who is this? This is David, my fiancé, and you were saying? Look, maybe we made some mistakes when you were younger, my father continued, his voice taking on the reasonable tone I remembered from childhood arguments. But that was 20 years ago. You've clearly done well for yourself. Don't you think it's time to let bygones be bygones? The casual dismissal of my pain, the reduction of their abandonment to some mistakes, it hit me like a physical blow. But instead of the devastation I might have felt at 25, I felt something else entirely. Clarity. Let me make sure I understand, I said, moving to stand behind one of the chairs, using it as a barrier. You abandoned me in Chicago as a joke. You ignored my calls for help. You told everyone back home that I was the one who cut contact, that you were the victims of my ingratitude. You took credit for my success while playing the part of heartbroken parents. And now that you're facing financial ruin, you want me to forget all of that and write you a check. We raised you, my mother said desperately. We paid for your education. We sacrificed so much for you. You raised me until it was convenient to abandon me. You paid for an education that I've repaid 10 times over through my success. And you sacrificed nothing. You made a choice to prioritize your own pride and control over your daughter's well-being. My father's face was reddening the way it always did when he was about to lose his temper. Don't you dare talk to us like that. We're your parents. We deserve your respect. Respect? I laughed, and it was a sound I didn't recognize from my own throat. You want to know what I've learned in the 20 years since you left me at Union Station? Family isn't about DNA or obligation. It's about showing up. It's about being there when someone needs you. It's about choosing to love someone even when it's difficult. I looked around the room, at my father's angry face, my mother's desperate tears, David's quiet support by the door. The contrast was stark. I built this company from nothing, I continued. I created jobs for over 200 people. I've mentored young entrepreneurs, donated millions to scholarship funds, and built a life I'm proud of. I did all of that without you. Not in spite of you abandoning me, but because you did. You taught me that the only person I could truly rely on was myself. So you won't help us? My mother whispered. I reached into my purse and pulled out the silver bracelet I'd been carrying for 3 days. The inscription, family forever caught the light as I said it on the conference table. This was from Grandma Johnson, and I said, I've kept it for 20 years as a reminder of what I thought family meant. But I realize now that Grandma was wrong. Family isn't forever. Family is earned every single day through actions and choices and showing up when it matters. I pushed the bracelet across the table toward them. I'm not your daughter anymore. I haven't been since July 15th, 2003. I'm Madison Rivers, CEO of Rivers Marketing Group, fiance to a man who chose to love me, friend to people who celebrate my success instead of trying to profit from it. I'm part of a family I built myself with people who show up. My father stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. You're making a huge mistake, Madison. We're your family, whether you like it or not. Blood is blood. Blood means nothing without love, and love means nothing without actions. I moved toward the door where David was waiting. Security will escort you out. If you contact me again, if you show up at my office or my home, if you try to use my name or my success for your own purposes, I'll have my lawyers involved. My mother was crying now, reaching for the bracelet. Madison, please, I'm sick. We're losing everything. I paused at the doorway, feeling David's supportive presence beside me. For a moment, I saw not the manipulative parents who had abandoned me, but two elderly people facing the consequences of decades of poor choices. I felt a flicker of something that might have been pity. I'm sorry you're going through a difficult time, I said quietly. But I learned a long time ago that the choices we make have consequences. You chose to abandon me when I needed guidance and support. You chose to lie about our relationship for 20 years. You chose to show up here tonight at my company celebration, trying to claim ownership of achievements you had no part in creating. I stepped into the hallway, then turned back one last time. I choose not to be part of your story anymore. Good luck with whatever comes next. David and I walked back to the elevator in silence. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of my parents through the conference room's glass wall. My father arguing with security, my mother clutching the silver bracelet to her chest. When we returned to the party, nothing had changed. The jazz quartet was still playing, people were still laughing and networking, the champagne was still flowing. But everything was different for me. I felt lighter, unburdened, like I'd finally set down a weight I'd been carrying for 2 decades. Later that night, David and I sat on our balcony overlooking the lake, wrapped in blankets against the November cold. How do you feel? He asked. I considered the question carefully. Free, I said finally. For the first time in 20 years, completely free. Any regrets? I thought about the scared 25-year-old who had sat in Union Station, abandoned and heartbroken. I thought about the years of building my career while carrying the pain of rejection. I thought about the family I'd created from colleagues, friends, and chosen relationships. No, I said. No regrets. They gave me the greatest gift they could have given me, even if they didn't mean to. They taught me that I was strong enough to build my own life. David reached over and took my hand. For what it's worth, I'm grateful they made that choice 20 years ago. If they hadn't, you might never have become the woman I fell in love with. The next morning, I had a new bracelet delivered to my office. A simple platinum band engraved with 4 words. Family is who shows up. It was a gift from David, but it represented something larger than our relationship. It represented the truth I'd learned through 2 decades of building a life without the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. I wore it to the board meeting that afternoon, where we discussed opening a new scholarship fund for young entrepreneurs who were starting their businesses without family support. It felt like the right way to honor the journey that had brought me here. The phone calls stopped after that night at the Palmer house. I never heard from Richard and Linda Johnson again, and I found that their absence felt exactly the same.